Good afternoon. My name is Rabbi David Spinrad from Bethel Hebrew here in Alexandria, and as we begin, a special welcome and thank you to our city elected officials. Thank you so much for being here today, and a thank you to all of you who came out on this Sunday afternoon to remember the life and ultimately the legacy of Joseph McCoy. In a moment, we will hear a reading from Ms. Rose Dawson from our city library. Then we'll make a solemn and sacred processional to the lynching site. Once we reach there, we will hear another reading. Following the reading, there will be an opportunity to lay a stone of remembrance. And then following that, there will be a laying of the wreath. A word about the stone. In the Jewish tradition, there is a tradition to lay a stone at the site of oftentimes a burial site, but today, brokenheartedly, a lynching site. The symbol of the stone represents both the grief that we feel in our hearts over this senseless and savage murder, a heaviness, a weight that can never, ever go away. And the second reason we leave a stone at the site is there is a durability, there is an endurance to a stone that differs from a flower that will wither and blow away. But a stone symbolizes permanence, that Mr. McCoy, his life is a part of our city's legacy, deserves and must be honored and remembered as we do today. One final word as we do process in a moment, that it is a sacred and solemn processional, and so we ask that we keep the conversation to a minimum as we process from here to there.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, Friday, April 23rd, at least 500 people stood in this spot outside the doors of the police station. Rumors and liquor fueled their sense of superiority and outrage. Joseph McCoy, a young black boy, was in a cell inside the building. Just that afternoon, he had been enjoying an unusually warm day, cutting firewood at Mr. Lacey's home. But now, everything was upside down. McCoy had never been to the police station before, and this was a terrifying first. How did this happen? He heard his name called out earlier when a lynch mob came for him, but the police turned them back. Unfortunately, Joseph's relief was short-lived. By the sound of it, an even bigger crowd was outside the building. Their voices rumbled throughout the station house. A team of men holding a 16-foot timber stood in front of the double doors. The white mob demanded the police give them McCoy. Then, when nothing happened, they attacked the doors and windows with sledges, axes, picks, and crowbars. Wood cracked, glass shattered, bullets snapped above heads. Officer Wilkinson went to McCoy's cell and told him about a hiding place above the door. Joseph went and hid in that crevice. Out of bullets, the police grabbed clubs and threw fists. Lieutenant Smith ordered his officer to ring the bell, alerting the Alexandria Light Infantry to their plight. However, the cavalry failed to materialize. Truth be told, at least a few light infantry officers were part of the mob, attacking the station to get McCoy. While some people were securing police officers in the street, another group, led by a little man wielding an axe, broke through the final door that led to the corridor and the prisoners' cells. The man with the axe went to work on McCoy's cell door. In an instant, the locks were smashed off, but they couldn't find McCoy. They ran upstairs to see if he escaped, but inside the crevice above the cell door, McCoy's muscles were cramping and his body was shaking. His hands were sweaty and he lost his grip on the wooden stud. His leg fell out. He couldn't stay tucked away into the wall any longer. Joseph jumped down and slid under the wooden bench in his cell. Then he was discovered. What seemed like a million hands clutched Joseph's shoulders, his hair, his shirt, and his arms. They dragged him through the corridor past the chewed-up double doors and dumped him onto Fairfax Street. On his knees, he raised his head. Surrounded by faces he recognized, Joseph begged for his life. Sweat, blood, and tears ran together, blurring his vision as he kept pleading. But the mob took no notice. They were debating the best place to hang him.
As the lynch mob marched down Cameron Street toward Lee, they beat Joseph with clubs. He stumbled and fell beneath the crowd. He disappeared from sight. Time seemed to stop. In that moment, Joseph watched as his tormentors walked past him. There was some confusion among the white men. They were looking for him. A screeching howl smashed into his ears. Hands yanked at him as they sought him out and found him. The feeling of time returned. The mob feared Joseph may get away. In haste, they decided to hang Joseph from the closest lamppost. A rope pilfered from the awning of Mr. Price's hardware shop was made into a noose and looped around Joseph's neck. He couldn't see what was happening. His eye was swelling. Someone smashed a cobblestone into his head. Joseph was jerked off his feet, and the crowd broke into a riotous cheer. There will be no more outrages on white women in this town, someone yelled. They beat Joseph's body, pelted him with cobblestones, and sent 3 bullets into him. One entered his left shoulder, and 2 lodged in his left thigh. Blood ran from Joseph's nose and mouth. His swollen eye was shut. Let it be a warning for the future. Joseph was left hanging, breathless, neck unbroken, for a quarter of an hour. Not a single person identified his murderers. Failed by the officers of the law, failed by public officials, and failed by fellow Alexandrians. Joseph McCoy was denied his God-given rights, his life, and justice.
As we move toward the conclusion of our observance this afternoon, a special welcome and a note of gratitude for the descendants of Joseph McCoy to my right. Thank you so very much, of course, for joining us today, and my heart is with you always. Amen.
I think it's so important to recognize the history of our community, particularly the history that reflects tragedy and loss, and how we must do better. And for the McCoy family, our deepest apologies.
Well, I mean, this is an important continuation. We're also entering a new phase in this effort. We have, we went down to Montgomery a couple months ago. We brought the soil from Alexandria down there. And I think now, as we come out of that phase, it's about, how do we turn this into larger than just laying a wreath? How do we make this an effort to bring lasting change to the community? I think we know that the legacy of this lynching and Joseph McCoy, the legacy of Benjamin Thomas, that legacy continues in our city in unseen and seen ways. And I think what our charge, and I think what the folks who have been a part of this effort from the beginning want to see is, how do we turn turn this into to lasting change? How do we understand more about this history, but also understand the ways that history continues in some ways in our city through the inequities we see in various places in our community, and I think that's the work ahead. That's the really important work ahead. So.
Really to just understand our history of racism, and they're willing to do the work to understand, to talk to people, and bridge that divide today. And it's really been heartwarming to see people come together as a community to embrace this story and to use this as a catalyst for doing more work on the lines of equity in our community.
Definitely, I thought they were incredibly moving, and it's always important to us when we have the family members with us. And so I think showing the family members that the City of Alexandria has a very strong commitment to telling our full history and incorporating African American history, the good and the ugly, into our city story. And we need to know these stories, these brutal, horrific stories, because they inform how a community reacts and how a community feels, and if a community is living in fear. And so we have to be honest and we have to be transparent. So I think by the commitment of the mayor, city manager, members of council, members of the community, and the family being here, we are stressing that we are committed to this in perpetuity, that we will never forget Joseph McCoy, and in August we'll never forget Benjamin Thomas. So very important.
We had such a moving memorial event today for Mr. Joseph McCoy, and I'm moved. I'm almost speechless. What happened to Mr. McCoy and Mr. Thomas as young African American teenagers is so unthinkable, and I'm proud that our city of Alexandria has not only acknowledged but has apologized and is trying to honor their deaths appropriately, and is involving the community. And as a community, we went to Montgomery, Alabama, and Selma. And I think the Office of Historic Alexandria deserves a lot of credit. And I'm especially proud of our students from Alexandria City High School who have been deeply involved in the process. Amazing. And I was mayor 2016 until 2019, and during those 3 years, I received a letter from the Equal Justice Initiative, and I think it was 2017. And thus began, we had to find out, first of all, if it was true, because it was so shocking, a letter. And at that time, Equal Justice Initiative wasn't on the map. It was still an idea, really. And now, of course, it's famous, and Brian Stevenson is famous, and as it should be. But anyway, we found out it was true from the Office of Historic Alexandria about the murders and the lynchings, the terrorizing of these young men. And thus began our commitment to Equal Justice Initiative and the process, which takes many years, as that should as well. So I'm honored to be here today with everyone, but especially with some of the descendants of Mr. Joseph McCoy.
My thoughts going through this whole ceremony was just heartbreaking, because walking down the street and having to, feel the way that Joseph McCoy had felt walking down the same street, it really just caused this reaction in my heart to kind of just break down a little bit. I did cry a little bit, but it just shows just how terrifying and how heartbreaking it was having to, get removed from the place that you were from and just taken down to a place that you don't even belong to, and having to get hurt and making things worse for the people who had done it to him. And again, my condolences to the family, but this is something that shouldn't be done at all, and it's awful, it's terrible. But I did feel proud knowing that I was given the opportunity to represent him and his family, and that today was a blessing.
We, as representing the family, again, we want to thank everybody, not only the city officials, but the citizens of this city who take time out of their busy schedules to remember with us our uncle and descendant, Joseph McCoy, and to share in this time of remembrance and reflection. We are very much appreciative, and we thank those who had a hand in putting this observance in place. Thank you.
On behalf of the family, we just want to thank the city of Alexandria from the bottom of our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude for this observance. We can't deny that we've been moved emotionally, spiritually, on every level, but still we want to thank the city of Alexandria for remembering Joseph McCoy in this way. We realize that so much goes on and so many people are forgotten, but for the fact that the city has taken the time and put forth such a glorious and beautiful effort to remember a descendant of ours, we are indeed grateful, and we thank you so very much.